On their wedding night, he held her close and she surrendered to his love. The arrangement, Delina Rosewood stood in her cramped apartment, staring at the eviction notice in her trembling hands. 3 months behind on rent, her photography equipment about to be repossessed, and her dream of becoming a professional photographer crumbling like autumn leaves. At 25, she felt like life had already passed her by. The city lights outside her window seemed to mock her failures, each twinkling bulb a reminder of dreams she couldn't afford to chase. Her phone buzzed with another message from her landlord. Final notice: tomorrow she'd be homeless unless she could produce $3,000 she simply didn't have. Her portfolio sat untouched on her desk, filled with beautiful images that no gallery wanted to display. Her art meant nothing if she couldn't eat or keep a roof over her head. The knock on her door came at exactly 9 o'clock that evening. Elena wrapped her worn cardigan tighter around her shoulders as she peered through the peephole. A man in an expensive charcoal suit stood in the hallway, his presence commanding even through the distorted lens. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and when he looked up at the camera, his steel blue eyes seemed to pierce right through her. "Miss Rosewood." His voice was deep and cultured when she cracked the door open, keeping the chain attached. "My name is Gabriel Sterling. I believe we have something important to discuss." Elena's heart raced. She'd never seen this man before, yet something about him made her pulse quicken in ways she couldn't explain. "I'm sorry, but I don't know you. It's quite late." Gabriel held up a thick manila envelope. "I understand your hesitation, but what I have to offer could solve all your problems. May I come in? I promise you'll want to hear what I have to say." Against every instinct screaming at her to slam the door, Elena found herself unlatching the chain. Gabriel Sterling entered her modest apartment, and suddenly the space felt impossibly small. His presence filled every corner with an electricity that made her skin tingle. He was tall, probably 6'2", with broad shoulders that strained against his perfectly tailored jacket. "You're more beautiful than your photograph suggested," he said softly, his eyes traveling over her face with an intensity that made her cheeks flush. "What photographs? I don't understand what this is about." Elena pulled her cardigan tighter, suddenly aware of her threadbare pajama pants and oversized t-shirt. Gabriel set the envelope on her coffee table with careful precision. "I've been observing your work, Elena. Your photographs are extraordinary. You have a gift for capturing raw emotion, for finding beauty in the most unlikely places." She blinked in confusion. "How do you know my work?" "I make it my business to know talented people who are struggling unnecessarily." He stepped closer, and she caught the scent of his cologne, something expensive and masculine that made her head spin. "I know about your eviction notice, about the equipment you're about to lose, about the gallery that rejected your latest submission." Elena's face burned with embarrassment. "How could you possibly know those things?" "Because I've been watching you, Elena. Not in a creepy way," he added quickly when her eyes widened. "I've been following your career, your struggles, your incredible determination to succeed despite impossible odds." He opened the envelope and pulled out a thick contract. "I have a proposition for you." Elena stared at the legal document, her mind reeling. "What kind of proposition?" Gabriel's expression grew serious. "I need a wife and you need financial security. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement." The words hit her like a physical blow. She sank onto her couch, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. "Excuse me?" 2 years of marriage," Gabriel continued, his voice steady and businesslike. "You'll receive $5 million paid in installments. All your debts cleared immediately, plus a full photography studio setup and funding for your first gallery showing." Elena felt like she was drowning. "You're insane. We don't even know each other. That's exactly why it's perfect." Gabriel sat beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. No complicated emotions, no messy feelings. Just a clean business arrangement that benefits us both. "But why me?" she whispered. "You could have any woman you want." Gabriel's smile was enigmatic, but something flickered in his eyes. "I've done extensive research. You're honest, hardworking, and desperately in need of help. Most importantly, you won't fall in love with me and complicate things." The certainty in his voice made something twist in her chest. "You seem very sure of that." "I am." But his eyes betrayed a hint of vulnerability. "I don't do love, Elena. I tried once and it nearly destroyed me. This arrangement protects us both. Elena stared at the contract, the numbers swimming before her eyes. $5 million. It would solve every problem she had. Give her the freedom to pursue her art without worrying about survival. What would you expect from me? Public appearances as my wife. Social events, business dinners. We'd maintain separate bedrooms in my estate, though you'd have complete access to the grounds and a fully equipped photography studio. And physically? The question slipped out before she could stop it, and she felt her face burn with embarrassment. Gabriel's eyes darkened, his voice dropping to a husky whisper. What happens between us privately would be entirely your choice. I would never pressure you into anything you didn't want. He leaned slightly closer. But I won't lie and say I don't find you incredibly attractive. The air between them crackled with tension. Elena found herself leaning toward him, drawn by an invisible magnetic force. This was insane. She was considering marrying a complete stranger for money. Yet something about Gabriel Sterling made her feel more alive than she had in years. This is crazy, she breathed. Sometimes, crazy is exactly what we need. Gabriel reached out and gently touched her cheek, his fingers warm against her skin. What do you say, Elena? Will you be my wife? Her heart pounded so hard she was certain he could hear it. The logical part of her mind screamed warnings, but the desperate part, the part that was tired of struggling and failing, whispered, yes. I need time to think, she managed. Of course, but I need an answer by tomorrow evening. I have lawyers standing by and we could be married within the week. Why the rush? Gabriel's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Business obligations, family expectations? The details aren't important. What matters is whether you're brave enough to take this leap. After he left, Elena paced her apartment until dawn. She called her best friend Mia, who thought she'd lost her mind. She called her sister, who worried about her marrying a stranger. But every time she looked at her empty refrigerator, her stack of overdue bills, her unused camera equipment, she thought about Gabriel's offer. And every time she closed her eyes, she saw his steel blue eyes and felt the electric touch of his fingers on her skin. The next evening, Gabriel returned as promised. This time Elena was ready. She'd spent the day researching him online, finding articles about his successful technology company, his philanthropic efforts, his reputation as a fair but demanding businessman. She'd also spent extra time on her appearance, wearing her best dress and carefully applying makeup. When she opened the door, she saw his eyes darken with appreciation. You look stunning, he said, his voice rougher than before. I've made my decision, she said. Stepping aside to let him in, Gabriel turned to face her, and she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands clenched slightly at his sides. He was nervous, she realized. This powerful, confident man was actually nervous about her answer. Elena took a deep breath, looking directly into his eyes. Yes, I'll marry you. Gabriel's relief was visible, though he tried to hide it. You won't regret this, Elena. I'll take care of everything. I can take care of myself, she said firmly. This is a business arrangement, remember? Of course. But the way he looked at her, the heat in his eyes, suggested it might not be as simple as either of them wanted to believe. The wedding took place 5 days later, in a small chapel overlooking the ocean. Elena wore a simple but elegant white dress that Gabriel had purchased for her, along with a strand of pearls that probably cost more than her yearly rent. He looked devastatingly handsome in his black tuxedo, and when he took her hand at the altar, she felt a jolt of electricity shoot up her arm. Do you, Gabriel Sterling, take Elena Rosewood to be your lawfully wedded wife? The minister asked. I do. Gabriel's voice was steady, but his eyes held hers with an intensity that made her knees weak. Do you, Elena Rosewood, take Gabriel Sterling to be your lawfully wedded husband? I do, she whispered, her voice barely audible. You may kiss the bride. Gabriel stepped closer, his hands coming up to frame her face. Trust me, he whispered, his breath warm against her lips. Then he kissed her, and the world disappeared. It was supposed to be a simple ceremonial kiss, but instead it was fire and passion and need all rolled into one perfect moment. Elena felt herself melting into him, her hands fisting in his jacket as he deepened the kiss. She forgot where they were, forgot the small audience, forgot that this was supposed to be fake. All she could focus on was the way his mouth moved against hers with desperate hunger. When they broke apart, they were both breathing hard. The wedding guests applauded, but Elena barely heard them. She was lost in Gabriel's eyes, seeing something there that hadn't been in any contract. "Mrs. Sterling," he said softly, and the way he said her new name made her shiver with anticipation. As they left the chapel together, Elena realized her life had just taken a turn she never could have imagined. What started as a desperate business arrangement was already becoming something much more complicated, much more dangerous, and infinitely more thrilling. The wedding night, the Sterling mansion took Elena's breath away. Perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific, it was all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows that captured the moonlight dancing on the waves below. Gabriel carried her over the threshold, and she was acutely aware of his strength. The way his muscles flexed beneath his jacket, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against her chest. "Welcome home, Mrs. Sterling," he said as he set her down in the marble foyer. The words should have felt strange, but instead they felt right. "Too right. It's beautiful," Elena whispered, taking in the artwork lining the walls, the elegant staircase that curved up to the second floor. "Would you like me to show you to your room?" Gabriel asked, but his voice was strained as if the words cost him something. Elena looked at this man who was now her husband, this stranger who had swept into her life and changed everything. The smart thing would be to say yes, to maintain their professional distance, to remember that this was just business. Instead, she stepped closer to him. "Gabriel, yes? About what you said earlier, about this being entirely my choice." His eyes darkened. "It is, completely." Elena reached up and loosened his tie, her fingers trembling slightly. "Then I choose to stay with you tonight." Gabriel groaned softly, his hands coming up to cover hers. "Elena, are you sure? Because if we do this, if we cross this line, there's no going back to just business." Instead of answering with words, Elena stood on her toes and kissed him. This time there was no audience, no ceremony to complete. Just the two of them and the fire that had been building between them since the moment they met. Gabriel lifted her into his arms, carrying her up the stairs to the master bedroom. The room was masculine but elegant, dominated by a king-sized bed with crisp white linens. Moonlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, bathing everything in silver. Gabriel set her down gently beside the bed, his hands framing her face. "I want you to know that whatever happens between us, I'll never hurt you. This arrangement, this marriage, it's real now. You're under my protection." Something in his voice made her look at him more carefully. "Gabriel, what aren't you telling me? Why did you really need to get married so quickly?" He was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing across her lower lip. "There are things about my past, about my business that I can't share with you yet. Not because I don't trust you, but because I need to keep you safe." "Safe from what?" "From people who might try to use you to get to me." Gabriel pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers. "But tonight I don't want to think about any of that. Tonight I just want to be with my wife." The word wife sent heat pooling in Elena's belly. She reached up and began unbuttoning his shirt, her fingers steady now. Gabriel's breath hissed out as her hands touched his bare chest, exploring the planes of muscle, the light dusting of dark hair. "You're so beautiful," he whispered, his hands skimming down her sides, finding the zipper of her dress. The silk pooled at her feet, leaving her in only her delicate lace lingerie. Gabriel's eyes darkened as they traveled over her body, and Elena felt powerful and desirable in a way she never had before. "My turn," she whispered, pushing his shirt off his shoulders. Gabriel's hands tangled in her hair as she explored his chest with her lips, tasting salt and warmth and something uniquely him. He was all hard muscle and restraint control, but she could feel him trembling beneath her touch. "Elena," he groaned when her mouth found the sensitive spot where his neck met his shoulder. "You're driving me crazy." "Good," she whispered against his skin. "I like driving you crazy." Gabriel spun them around, pressing her gently back against the bed. His mouth found hers again, hungrier now, more demanding. His hands roamed over her body with reverent touches, as if he was memorizing every curve, every sensitive spot that made her gasp and arch against him. When he unhooked her bra, Letting it fall away, Elena felt a moment of vulnerability. But the way Gabriel looked at her, with wonder and desire and something deeper, chased away any self-consciousness. "Perfect," he breathed, his mouth trailing down her throat. "You're absolutely perfect." Elena had never felt desired like this, never felt so cherished and wanted. Gabriel's touch was gentle but sure, his mouth finding places that made her cry out with pleasure she'd never experienced. He took his time, exploring every inch of her skin, building the fire between them until she was trembling with need. "Please," she whispered, her hands clutching at his shoulders. "Gabriel, please. Tell me what you want," he said against her lips, his voice rough with barely contained desire. "You," she breathed. "I want you. All of you." Gabriel's control finally snapped. He claimed her mouth in a kiss that was pure possession, while his hands completed the task of removing the last barriers between them. When they finally came together, it was with a passion that surprised them both. Elena had expected their first time to be awkward, uncertain. Instead, it was like they'd been made for each other. Gabriel moved with her, responding to every gasp, every sigh, every touch of her hands. The connection between them was immediate and intense, as if their bodies recognized something their minds weren't ready to admit. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Elena's head on Gabriel's chest, listening to his heartbeat slow to normal. His fingers traced lazy patterns on her bare back, and she felt more content than she had in years. "No regrets?" Gabriel asked softly. Elena lifted her head to look at him. The moonlight, his face was softer, more vulnerable than she'd ever seen it. "None," she said firmly. "You?" "None." His hand cupped her cheek. "Elena, I want you to know that this wasn't part of my plan. What happened tonight, the way I feel about you, it's not something I expected. How do you feel about me?" she asked, her heart racing. Gabriel was quiet for a moment, his eyes searching hers. "Like you're going to turn my carefully ordered world completely upside down." Elena smiled, pressing a kiss to his chest. "Is that a bad thing?" "I'm not sure yet," Gabriel admitted, pulling her closer. "But I'm willing to find out." As they drifted off to sleep in each other's arms, Elena realized that what had started as a desperate business arrangement had become something infinitely more complex and beautiful. She was falling for her husband, this mysterious man who had rescued her from her struggles and given her more than just financial security. But she couldn't shake the feeling that Gabriel was hiding something important, something that could change everything between them. His mentions of keeping her safe, of people who might try to use her, suggested there were complications she didn't understand. For now, though wrapped in Gabriel's strong arms, feeling cherished and desired and possibly loved, Elena chose to focus on the present. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. After all, they were married now. And if tonight had taught her anything, it was that some arrangements were worth fighting for. The last thing she remembered before sleep claimed her was Gabriel's voice, soft and tender in the darkness. "Sweet dreams, my wife." And for the first time in years, Elena knew they would be.